Howdy, my totally always tubular gamers. We're weed and, well, you know what? Forget that. It's time for another video.
Well, we're back with another ranking video, and today we're going to be talking about Robocop. Now, Robocop doesn't need all that much of an introduction, now does he? He's one of the most well-known characters from the 80s and 90s. The original film is a legendary piece of media that still holds up incredibly well even nowadays. But today we're not going to be talking about Robocop films, we're going to be talking about Robocop video games. Now, a franchise such as Robocop seems like it would be tailor-made, primed even, for video games, and as such there have been a number of Robocop games throughout the years. And today we're going to be ranking them from worst to best, giving each one of these games a little review, seeing how they stack up against each other, sharing my thoughts, feelings, memories, etc. and just generally seeing which games are worth your time. I did a Robocop ranking a few years ago, but it was a bit inconclusive. I'm not super happy with it, and there's actually a new Robocop game that's been released, a standalone expansion for Rogue City known as Unfinished Business, and I do want to give a shout out to Dead Good Media and the publisher for hooking me up with a review code. Very cool of you guys. Now, before we begin, I do want to bring up that while there might only be 7 Robocop games, 4 of these games actually have different versions, and some of these versions are quite different from each other, especially when it comes to the quality. Now, I have not played every single version of every single Robocop game, and if you came to this video expecting that, well, I apologize, I'm not made of time and I just haven't gotten around to trying all the different versions. So for the sake of clarity in this video, I'm going to tell you which versions of the Robocop games I did play, and what we're going to be looking at today. I'm going to be looking at the arcade versions of Robocop 1 and 2, the Super Nintendo version of Robocop 3, the Amiga version of Robocop 3 since it's vastly different from the Super Nintendo version, Robocop vs Terminator on the Sega Genesis, Robocop on Xbox, Robocop Rogue City, and Robocop Rogue City Unfinished Business. If I say Robocop one more time, I'm actually gonna fucking explode. And so if you're just devastated that I'm not going to be talking about like the NES versions of Robocop 1, 2, or 3 or the Game Boy versions, well, it doesn't exactly look like I'm missing much, but those are the games I'm talking about. This intro has gone on long enough. Let's get to the games. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. I got the Patreon, the super thanks. Any support is truly greatly appreciated. Seriously, thank you all so very much. Let's get to it. What is the worst of the Robocop games? And so here we have Robocop releasing initially in 2003 for the original Xbox. While in Europe this might have come out on other platforms, here in the States it really only ever came out on the Xbox. Now, I remember trying this game back in high school when I thought it would be fun to play a bunch of shitty games and doing stupid goofy videos on them which are not public now. And yeah, Robocop at the time was called one of the worst first-person shooters of all time, and all these years later it still holds that title. It is one of the very worst first-person shooters ever made. And of the Robocop games I played, it's easily the worst of them. It was developed by Titus, who created such masterpieces like Superman 64, KO the Kangaroo on Game Boy Advance. And yeah, this game really lines up with what you would expect quality-wise from the people who made Superman 64. Now, when it comes to this game's premise, it does have an original story. It sees our favorite cyborg police officer in Neo Detroit, and he's responsible for finding the people spreading this new evil drug known as Brain Drain. And the story really just doesn't even really feel like Robocop outside of the setting and physically seeing Robocop, but they don't even have the original actor doing the voice. It's like a really just kind of shitty impersonator. And speaking of shitty, we have the presentation. This game did not look good for 2003. It looks barely above a Nintendo 64 game. In fact, you could convince me probably it's a Nintendo 64 game. I mean, Perfect Dark didn't really look any worse than this. But whatever setup and poor presentation aside, we have the gameplay, which is really where this game just shits the bed, you know? It's always going to be a challenge to make a first-person shooter based off Robocop. I mean, he just kind of walks around slowly gunning everything down. In this game, just absolutely had no idea how to make the game good, fun, challenging, or interesting. It is a very basic, unsatisfying first-person shooter where you slowly walk around just gunning down basically everything that moves. And unlike a certain other Robocop game, this game is the opposite of fun. The weapons are unsatisfying, the gunplay doesn't feel nice, the AI are all over the place, and the difficulty just spikes up and down. See, most of the enemies in this game, all the human enemies, you could just wipe the fucking floor with them. Just like in the movies, you just kind of kill them like instantly. But the moment a a non-human enemy shows up, oh, they're gonna kill you so fast. It is like shocking how just this game will spike up in difficulty and then just drop because it's only human enemies, and there's no checkpoints, so if you die you got to restart the whole mission. How fun. The shooting and just combat in general is the opposite of satisfying. It's just so unfun, it's uninteresting, it's dull, it doesn't feel like it's going anywhere. The weapons just do not feel nice. It feels like you're underwater. You go through some really bland, basic, uninspired environments. The game doesn't really have any set pieces in here. There's a couple mini bosses, but these are so mind-numbingly boring where you just shoot it over and over and over. Like this sucks. The game's only a few hours, but man does it get repetitive. There is just basically no variety here. Like, you can save hostages and you can kind of be a good cop and not kill all the people trying to kill you, especially if you like disarm them, but it just doesn't really matter. This game, it's just absolutely rancid. But hey, it is cool to see how a first-person shooter Robocop game should not be done and compare it to what we have now. It's only better from here. But yeah, avoid this game like the plague. Let's move on. And so here we have Robocop 3 for the Super Nintendo. Now, Robocop 3 is a film. Yeah, I'd rather not talk about that one, and here we have an entire game based off of it. But surprisingly, this game is not as bad as you would think. I'm not going to say this game's great or some hidden gem, but it's not total garbage, you know? There's not a lot to it. Most of the game is you just walking left to right slowly, just basically gunning everything down. You might go up some stairs, you might go down some stairs, dare I say you might even go right to left, but for the most part, yeah, it's left to right, just shooting absolutely everything, just completely destroying everything with your weapons, you know? You get power-ups to make your weapons even stronger. Robocop's a freaking tank. There is some platforming in this game. It's not great, but there really isn't a lot of it. I mean, Robocop is as stiff as you would expect. The controls are fine for what they are. The shooting does feel half decent, and enemies die in a satisfying way. You'll kill plenty of people and destroy plenty of machines in this game. Like, you really just absolutely shoot the crap out of everything. In the game, you know, it's actually alright. Look, it's not great. It doesn't have the most memorable level design or interesting boss fights, or really the most interesting gameplay, and the hit detection just straight up is wonky. There's also no checkpoints in these levels, so if you die, you have to start the whole thing over, and the difficulty can be kind of skewed, but other than that, I mean, yeah, I'd say it's pretty okay. There's even some shmup levels where it's like a top-down shooter and you're flying around blowing stuff up, and you know, I've certainly played a lot worse on the Super Nintendo. I've certainly heard a lot better though on Super Nintendo. The audio in this game is just terrible. From the sound effects to the music, it just sucks. At least the game doesn't look that bad. Look, Robocop 3, it might be based off a pretty crummy movie, but we don't have the crummiest game here, and that's probably a win. And here we have Robocop 1. Now, there was a number of different versions released for this game, but I'm looking at the arcade version. That seems to be the version everybody praises the most. And you know what? As an older arcade game, it's pretty decent. The game is a pretty run-of-the-mill run-and-gun shooter from the 80s. The game plays incredibly similar to the developer Data East's previous arcade game known as Bad Dudes vs. Dragon Ninja, which is like as 80s as it gets. But if you've played any classic run-and-gun game or classically styled run-and-gun game, I think you're going to be very familiar with this. I mean, it's pretty easy to understand. You're Robocop and you kill bad guys. You move left to right, just shooting absolutely everything and killing seemingly as many people as you can. You'll get a couple different weapons, but most of the time you're just walking around with this pistol just blasting fools left and right. You know, they pretty much infinitely spawn, so you'll just be constantly moving, shooting absolutely everything. And this game, you'll just get bombarded by enemies. It's one of those classic 80s games where they just throw everyone at you, and Robocop can take it all. He's a bit of a tank. You know, the game is challenging. I mean, it's an arcade game. Of course it's going to be challenging to take your money, but it isn't like stupidly challenging. The game tries to have a few memorable moments recreating set pieces from the movie. You even have a boss fight or two, and you know, it's alright. There's even these target practice stages where it's in first person, and these are a nice distraction, you know. Despite seeming like a generic run and gun shooter, I think it decently captures Robocop's vibe. I mean, Robocop looks pretty good. It's even got the theme, and you kill a lot of people in a very violent fashion. I mean, what else could you need? You know, the Robocop arcade game, yeah, it's alright. Can't speak on those other versions, but this version, yeah, it's good. So here we have Robocop 3, but this time it's the Amiga version. Now, I obviously talked about the Super Nintendo version of Robocop 3 earlier, and while I think that's a decent game, I think the Amiga version is actually quite a bit better. And I think it's wild just how drastically different the PC version is from the home console version, to the point that not only did I try it, but I gave it its own separate entry. With the other Robocop games, usually all of the versions are at least kinda similar to each other. Here, yeah, outside of the name and the story, story, there's no similarities. So while the name of the game and the story are the same, the gameplay really is completely different. This game actually has 5 different gameplay segments to it, and what's even crazier is that all of these were rendered in 3D. You actually get to drive around in a 3D space, going from point A to B. At one point it's actually a first-person shooter where you're walking around and shooting people, you're rescuing hostages and everything. There's another section where it's got hand-to-hand combat. Another part of the game has you flying a jetpack, and this plays pretty differently from the rest of the game, and then you also get to battle a robot ninja. I can't believe just how many different styles of gameplay there are here and how decent all of it actually is. For the most part, it is relatively enjoyable. Yes, it is rather slow and it might look pretty primitive by today's standards, but you also got to remember when this game came out, and I think for the time, it's actually alright. Everything handles fine enough. You can get used to how everything handles, and it really doesn't matter which gameplay style it is. I was having some fun. The game certainly got a lot of variety to it, and you jump between these gameplay sections so fast that the entire game genuinely does feel fresh. Now, even though the graphics and sound are pretty limited by today's standards, they've got a certain level of charm to them, and this game certainly has an aesthetic to it. This is a hidden little gem that I never ever hear people talk about unless they're specifically talking about Robocop games, and that's a shame. It feels like it was a bit ahead of the curve, and it certainly deserves a bit more love. And yes, I can understand now why so many people told me to check out this version of the game. It is better than the home console version. And so here we have Robocop 2, which released initially in 1990. There were numerous versions of this game, but I decided to try the arcade version. That's the version everybody pops off about. And you know what? All these years later, this game still kicks some serious ass. The game, as the title implies, follows the plot of the Robocop 2 movie, and it has a number of set pieces from it. And I think the flow and general pacing of this game is pretty solid. Now this game, it plays more like Streets of Rage with guns, where you can move freely around, you can actually beat the shit out of enemies, but of course you got plenty of weapons to kill them with. From Robocop's iconic pistol to a bunch of other heavy weapons that can just totally decimate these fools. Like, this game is fun. It is just a fun time to just blast your way through these levels, killing absolutely everybody. Dead or alive, you're coming with me. Forget alive. Dead, you're not coming with me. You're just gonna stay in the ground dead. Like, it is actually a lot of fun here. It's satisfying. The enemies die in satisfying ways. A couple times the game changes perspective and you get to gun more people down. Like, it's never not fun. There's even levels where it goes like first person and you're in a vehicle just shooting more stuff. Like, this is great. The game looks pretty decent. It sounds great. It has a kick-ass soundtrack. It feels nice. It's fun to play. Like, I don't really know what else there is to say about it. It seriously kicks ass, and I think it does our boy Robocop some justice. If you're looking for a good forgotten beat 'em up from the 90s, this might be one worth checking out. And so here we have Robocop vs the Terminator, releasing initially in '93. There's a few different versions of this game, but the only version I have any experience with is the Sega Genesis version. And you know, this game, like most of the other Robocop games, is way better than you would expect. It's a pretty decent run and gun shooter, and I'd say this is a pretty underrated crossover game. Like, I don't see anybody ever talking about this unless they're talking about Robocop games. I see more people talk about the Alien vs Predator games than this game. Now, when it comes to the setup, it's actually interesting. Different versions of this game have different setups, but the general gist is Robocop fighting Terminator in Skynet. I mean, that's pretty much what it comes down to, and that's a pretty cool setup. And the gameplay really isn't that far off from other Robocop games of the time, with it being a 2D run and gun shooter where you move primarily left to right, do some platforming, and just blow everything up. You'll be fighting plenty of Terminators in this game, and you'll get a ton of cool weapons to just blow the shit out of them. Like, you're not just walking around with your pistol the whole game. No, you get some big badass weapons to blow stuff up, and there actually is a decent amount of platforming here, more than you would expect. And for the most part, it's good fun. I mean, it's just fun to walk around with this big badass weapon blowing up Terminators. I mean, who would have thought that's actually fun? Who could have possibly thought that? But here we are where it's actually fun. The controls are alright, they're not super stiff, they're not really unresponsive, but they are definitely heavy and a little clunky, and the platforming can be awkward at times, but again, it's fine for what it is. The weapons are satisfying, blowing up the Terminators are great. There actually is a decent amount of fan service if you're a fan of Robocop or Terminator, and so for that alone, I can just recommend the game to fans of either property. It isn't stupidly hard, it's got a decent length, taking longer to beat than the Robocop arcade games, and yeah, I enjoyed my time with it. I'd say this game is a little bit of a hidden gem, and I have no problem recommending it to anybody who hasn't tried it and likes games of this style. And so here we have Robocop Rogue City Unfinished Business. This is the latest Robocop game, and it's actually a standalone expansion to Rogue City. I couldn't tell you the last time a standalone expansion came out to anything. Back in the 2000s, we would actually get standalone expansions all the time, and so you know what? It's a refreshing throwback to see it in the modern day. So just to make things clear, you do not need to own Rogue City if you want to play this. You don't even need to have played Rogue City if you want to play this. I certainly would recommend it though. This game takes place after Rogue City, and it sees Robocop taking on a new gang. They're all holed up in this tower known as Omni Tower, and yep, it's up to Robocop to shoot the bad guys. Pew pew pew. The story, like Rogue City, isn't really anything all that special, but it pays a lot of respect and homage to Robocop and those original films. Yeah, at the end of the day, it is just Robocop going up against the bad guys, but they try to add a little bit more here with some other characters. They really show you the motivation behind the main antagonist, and they even dive deeper on Alex Murphy, the human being. You even get to play as him for a little bit. The story, writing, dialogue, world building, all of that, it's certainly not going to win any awards, and it's not as good as what Rogue City had, but I still think it's decent enough, and it more than gets the job done. So when it comes to the gameplay, it plays virtually identical to Rogue City. You gotta remember, this is an expansion. It was originally going to be a DLC. If you come into this expecting a full-fledged sequel, or really anything of the sort, well, you're just kind of setting yourself up for disappointment. And so it certainly is a good thing that Rogue City's core gameplay was as good as it is, because it still absolutely holds up, and what you have here is easily one of the best first-person shooters of the year, and a really solid 8 to 10 hours of gameplay here. All of Robocop's weapons and abilities from Rogue City return here, and they kick some serious ass. The pistol still feels absolutely incredible. You can pick up weapons from the ground, and these will absolutely shred through enemies, especially the shotguns. You'll just turn people into absolute dust. I love it, and the shooting really never got old. This game does introduce a new weapon, this ice weapon that freezes people, and at first I was like, I don't know about this one, seems kind of gimmicky, but you know what? They did a good job with this one too. It just shoots out a comical amount of ice, and it was fun to use. Robocop's great abilities return, like the bullet time, being able to boost around, and shielding, but you actually start with them this time around, and I think it's a nice touch. It adds a bit more variety to the gameplay. There's also a few sections where you don't play as Robocop, and I'll just say one of these is it's really freaking awesome, especially if you're a die-hard fan of the movies. I don't want to spoil it, I'll just say it's some really good shit. The combat was just as enjoyable as it was in Rogue City, if not even more so. Robocop can even do executions now, which would be pretty cool if the game didn't constantly glitch out on them, but it's a neat addition nonetheless. So something that is quite different about Unfinished Business from the original game is the game's structure and pacing. In the original game, there were a bunch of open areas you could freely explore. That just isn't here. The game, for the most part, is very linear. It's very much go from point A to B, and it's mostly corridors. From time to time, there's a little area you can explore, and there are some side missions in this game, but it gets nowhere near as open as Rogue City did, which wasn't even crazy open either. But at the very least, this just means that the pacing is faster and crazier than it ever was before. The game is constantly throwing new set pieces at you, and I would say that the campaign has a decent amount of variety here. I'm not too sure where to throw this in, but I will say that Robocop yet again can upgrade his pistol, and as you play through the game, you will get skill points to make him even better and better. You'll just become this unstoppable force by the end of it. Presentation-wise, yeah, it's pretty much the same as Rogue City. I think it's a good looking game. This very much is a AA game, but they really are shooting for the stars here. They're aspiring for AAA quality, and I think as a AA game, this is a great looking game. The environments look nice, the animation, while a bit stiff, is fine enough, and Robocop, you know what? There's a lot of detail on him. All of the other humans, yeah, not so much. But for the most part, it's fine, it's acceptable, and the frame rate was pretty decent throughout, except when the ice was getting real crazy. Then the game would actually start to chug for a few seconds. And when it comes to the sound, unsurprisingly, it's pretty much identical to Rogue City. All of the weapons sound incredible. I love Robocop, and all of his voice acting is great. Plenty of one-liners here as well. All of the other humans, I mean, they're okay to bad. So overall, I think Unfinished Business is a pretty good game. It really is exactly what I wanted, just more Robocop Rogue City. No, it doesn't reinvent the wheel. Yes, it is pretty much just the same gameplay in a new area. And no, I don't think it's better than the original game, but you still get a solid 8 to 10 hours here. It's quite a lot of fun, and for the most part, it's still immensely satisfying. The last thing I want to mention is that there were a number of bugs and glitches and just general lack of polish, more so than the base game even, but I'm hopeful that there'll be some patches out sooner or later to iron out some of these issues. Either way, I got no problem recommending this game, especially if you like first-person shooters, or if you tried Rogue City and enjoyed it, like, go check this one out. And so here we have Robocop Rogue City. It should come as absolutely no surprise that this is the very best of the Robocop games. It's not even close. Now, pre-release, I wasn't really sure what to make of this game. Teon has a pretty shoddy track record, but they did a bang-up job with Rogue City, and it's one of the best first-person shooters of the 2020s. And I'll just say it immediately, for anyone who has remotely any interest in Robocop or good first-person shooters, I have just zero problem recommending this game. It really does understand Robocop and first-person shooters as a whole. So the game sees you playing as the titular Robocop, Alex Murphy taking on this new crime lord known as the New Guy, and you know, a bunch of other people end up getting involved, and yeah, Robocop's just got to kill a lot of fools. The story is surprisingly good. It isn't just super random and thrown together and doesn't even make any sense for Robocop. No, it actually makes sense. It's well implemented into the movies, at least timeline-wise, taking place after the second one, and I think there's actually a pretty good story here. Robocop's good. I like how he progresses. I like the other characters. There's a decent amount of depth here. The villain, yeah, he's a little one-note, but I still think he's alright. But I think I'm just more surprised that this game has anything decent when it comes to the story or writing or characters. Like, it's actually okay, and I don't think really anybody expected that. I also didn't expect the presentation to be so solid. This game, it runs on Unreal Engine 5. It actually looks pretty good. Some of the environments look really good. The lighting is great. A lot of the effects are good. The blood splatter's great. The character models are decent. Robocop himself looks really good. He does have the original voice actor, so that's great. He's great. The other voice acting is pretty hit and miss, but for the most part, I'd say the presentation is very solid. Towards the end of the game, I was getting some frame rate issues, but for the most part, it was a very smooth experience, and it looked great too. So all that's good, but how's the gameplay? You really want to know about the gameplay. Oh, the gameplay is just excellent here. The gameplay is really great. It's an incredibly fun, satisfying, smooth first-person shooter that just totally understands what makes a good first-person shooter, and there's even a few things in this game I didn't expect. Like, I wasn't sure what to expect when it came to this game's pacing or structure. It's actually interesting. The game isn't open world, but there are a few open environments that you can do side quests in, and you'll go between these open environments pretty frequently, but there's plenty of linear levels in here as well, and linear sequences in these open environments, and I'd say the game seriously is like 50-50 linear and in these open environments, which is very cool. It's cool that there are side missions and you're not just mindlessly killing people the entire time. But speaking of mindlessly killing people, that's what you do a most of the game, is just absolutely decimating fools, grinding them into dust. This game completely understands what it means to be Robocop. You are a strong as shit tank that can just absolutely fucking annihilate everyone. You will come across plenty of people in this game, whether they're junkies, armored soldiers, mercenaries, robots, and they all fall the same. You just completely destroy them. Like, I have not had this much fun with a first-person shooter in quite some time. This is some of the very most satisfying gameplay you will find. Like, the gunplay is just great. You know, Robocop's main pistol feels just exceptional. It feels so good to use, but that's not the only weapon you get. You can pick up weapons from the enemies, and the shotgun in particular, this is one of the best feeling shotguns I've ever had in a game. It feels so good, but all of the weapons are good. Legit, there is not a bad weapon here. They all feel amazing. They all are great in their own right and offer something different, and they all do the same thing. They turn these people into fucking dust. Like, these people get blown away, blood splatters everywhere, it moves down the wall in real time. It just has a really high attention to detail. The sound effects that you make when you're killing people, the crunching of their bones or their head exploding is just so good. Like, this game just gets it. It is stupidly satisfying. I cannot put over just how satisfying the gunplay is in this game. Like, I have played a lot, and I mean a lot, of first-person shooters, but this is seriously one of the most satisfying FPS games I've played in forever. I just could not put it down the moment I started playing it. Like, I dropped almost everything that I was playing just to play this because I was having so much fun with it. But you aren't just totally mindlessly killing the same fools over and over. They do mix it up with different enemy types, and you might need some different tactics. Robocop himself can be upgraded, and you could give him a bunch of cool abilities. Like, you can speed up and boost all over. You actually get bullet time, and this is like one of the best bullet times in any game. Like, what? And something else I can appreciate is the game isn't stupidly easy, but it's not really challenging either. I think it actually does find a nice balance. I was worried the game was going to be super easy since you just completely annihilate fools, but they find ways to make it even slightly challenging. I did die a few times, I'm not afraid to admit that, but I really just didn't expect this level of depth with this game. I thought it was going to be a pretty linear, mindless shooter, but what we have is something more, and it's something great. And then when you aren't just completely destroying everything, there's actually choices you can make in conversations. You have like different conversations with characters. There's the side quests. You actually get to pick sides, and it can even affect the ending. I really did not expect this, but this is actually half decently implemented. And then there's just a shit ton of fan service. Like, there is so much fan service in this game. If you like Robocop at all, you will just be smiling ear to ear like the entire time. Like, I was just blown away with how much great fan service there was, how good the shooting was, how nice the game felt, how satisfying it was, how these other mechanics were actually decently well developed. The game wraps its story up with a nice little bow. Rogue City, it's a great game. You know it, I know it. At this point, I think it's pretty well known that Rogue City is an excellent first-person shooter. It's so good, I could recommend it to people that don't even like Robocop. It's just that good of a shooter. And I could pretty much say the same for its standalone expansion. But that's it for today's video. We talked some Robocop, who has a surprisingly decent track record when it comes to video games, and they're honestly better than you might expect. That's really what I could say about pretty much every Robocop game outside of that original Xbox game. Either way, I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you made it to this part of the video, you can comment $. If you know, you know. And with that, I wish you all well. Peace.